The planet of Tarvos was one of those places humans called uncharted on their star maps. It wasn't just uncharted, though, it was forbidden. Very few species ever dared to land there, and those that did often never came back. The rumors surrounding Tarvos painted it as a deathworld even by galactic standards, a place so hostile that not even the hardiest of deathworlder species would dare to test its depths. Most avoided it entirely, save for a few scavenger ships and explorers willing to take enormous risks. And yet, despite all the warnings, the crew of the Odyssey found themselves standing at the edge of a dense, mist-covered forest on Tarvos' surface. "Okay, Commander Erin," a tall, silver-skinned Skilaxian said as she studied the unfamiliar readings on her wrist scanner. "I'm officially regretting this decision. The atmosphere's breathable, but the life forms here are something else." Her elongated eyes flickered over the sensor readings, which displayed erratic spikes of energy in the environment. Behind her, the rest of the crew fidgeted nervously. There was Velrith, a stout, heavily armored Bruvan with a thick exoskeleton and the patience of a glacier. Next to him, Skarn, a gangly, pale Elvirian whose nervous energy had the habit of rubbing off on everyone around him, was already clutching his blaster tightly. Beside Skarn was Zessa, a sleek, emerald-scaled Dromori, the ship's second in command and a force to be reckoned with when it came to tactics. And then there was Ray Sutherland Human. Ray stood at the edge of the group, watching the mist with a quiet curiosity, her eyes bright with fascination. While the rest of the crew carried weapons or armor, Ray wore only her simple expedition gear, a lightweight jacket, boots, and a rucksack slung over her shoulder. Her calm demeanor seemed to contradict the eerie tension of their surroundings. "You're sure about this?" Erin asked, her voice tight as she glanced back at Ray. "We could still leave." Tarvos isn't exactly known for its hospitality. Ray grinned, her brown hair falling in loose waves around her face. "Oh, come on, Commander. You brought me on board for a reason, right? A planet like this is too fascinating to pass up. Besides, if the stories are true, there's got to be something incredible out there. Maybe it's not all as bad as it seems." Erin raised an eyebrow. "You've heard the stories, right? The beasts on this planet make other Deathworlders look like house pets. The last known expedition vanished without a trace." Ray waved her hand dismissively. "Stories always exaggerate. And anyway, I've seen worse. Remember that time on Helira IV?" "Helira IV didn't have predators that could swallow a Dromori whole," Erin muttered. "Not yet," Ray said with a wink. Velrith let out a low growl, his heavy exoskeleton clicking as he shifted uncomfortably. "We should not be here. Tarvos is cursed. The very ground breathes death." Skarn's elongated fingers tapped nervously on the barrel of his blaster. "I second that. I don't care if there's treasure hidden here. No amount of credits is worth whatever's waiting in that forest." Zessa, the most level-headed of the group, folded her arms across her chest. "Ray, this isn't a game. The creatures here are dangerous beyond anything we've encountered. We're talking about life forms that don't register on our scanners properly, things that bend physics in ways we don't understand." Ray, however, seemed unfazed by the mounting tension. She crouched down, picking up a small rock and turning it over in her hand. "Exactly. That's what makes it exciting. Imagine what we could learn here." Erin sighed, glancing at her crew. Ray was human, and humans had earned a reputation across the galaxy for their unconventional approach to danger. Other species were cautious, calculating. Humans? They had a tendency to see the universe as one big adventure playground, and Ray was no exception. "All right," Erin relented, though the nervous flutter in her chest hadn't disappeared. "But if anything goes wrong, we pull out immediately. No unnecessary risks." With that, the group stepped forward into the forest, their footsteps muffled by the thick, spongy underbrush. The trees loomed above them like towering sentinels, their gnarled trunks twisting in strange, unnatural patterns. The air was heavy with moisture, and the mist swirled around them in ghostly tendrils, making it impossible to see more than a few meters ahead. Ray walked at the front of the group, her eyes darting around with a sense of wonder. There was something primal about Tarvos, something ancient and untouched. It felt as though the planet had been isolated from the rest of the galaxy for millennia, its ecosystem evolving in ways no one could have predicted. As they moved deeper into the forest, the uneasy silence was broken only by the occasional chirp of an unseen creature or the distant rustle of leaves. Every now and then, the crew would freeze at the sound of something moving just beyond the edge of their vision, but nothing revealed itself. After nearly an hour of walking, Velrith grunted, his massive frame tense. "We should turn back. I can feel it. Something is watching us." "I agree," Skarn whispered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "The energy readings are spiking. This place isn't natural." Ray, however, was focused on something ahead. She had spotted a cluster of glowing plants, their bioluminescent tendrils illuminating the base of a massive tree. "Look at that. I've never seen anything like it." The rest of the crew gathered cautiously around her, keeping their distance as Ray knelt to examine the plants more closely. "It's incredible. These plants seem to be emitting a low-frequency hum, like they're communicating with each other." "Great," Skarn muttered. "Alien plants that talk. Wonderful. Can we go now?" Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them rumbled. The crew immediately tensed, weapons raised. The rumble grew louder, the earth trembling beneath their feet. Ray stood up slowly, her eyes scanning the trees around them. Then, without warning, the forest erupted. From the shadows, massive, spindly creatures emerged, their bodies covered in thick, chitinous armor that shimmered with a sickly iridescence. They moved with an unsettling speed, their long, segmented limbs scuttling across the ground with unnatural grace. Their faces, if they could be called, that were grotesque masses of mandibles and glowing, bulbous eyes. Velrith let out a guttural roar, his weapon firing into the nearest creature, but the shot ricocheted harmlessly off its armor. "It's no use. Their hide is too thick." Aaron's heart raced as the creatures closed in. "Fall back. We need to." Before she could finish, Ray stepped forward, her face breaking into a wide grin. "Oh my God," Ray said, her voice filled with awe. "They're adorable." The crew froze, staring at her in disbelief. "Adorable," Skarn hissed. "They're about to eat us." Ray, however, was undeterred. She approached one of the creatures slowly, holding out her hand. "Look at them. They're like giant armored crabs. They're not attacking, they're curious." Aaron opened her mouth to protest, but before she could stop her, Ray was already crouching in front of the largest of the creatures. Its massive, glowing eyes blinked at her, its mandibles clicking together in a strange rhythmic pattern. "Hey there," Ray said softly, her tone gentle. "You're not so scary, are you?" The creature tilted its head, or what passed for a head, and let out a low, rumbling sound. Its many legs shifted, and for a moment, Aaron thought it was about to lunge at Ray. But instead, it inched closer. Aaron's heart pounded in her chest. "Ray, get back. You don't know what that thing will." "It's fine," Ray interrupted, her voice calm. "It's not aggressive. Look at its body language, it's not posturing to attack." The creature lowered itself to the ground, its massive bulk settling just a few feet away from Ray. It let out another low rumble, and to everyone's shock, it extended one of its long, segmented limbs toward her. Ray laughed, her eyes sparkling. "See? It's just curious." Aaron, Velrith, and the others watched in stunned silence as Ray reached out and gently patted the creature's outstretched limb. The massive beast seemed to relax, its armored plates shifting slightly as it settled into the ground like a giant, bizarrely alien pet. "This is insane," Skarn muttered, his blaster still raised. "That thing could crush us with one swipe." Ray stood up, smiling at the creature. "It could, but it won't. Not unless we give it a reason to." Velrith let out a rumbling sigh. Humans, always doing the impossible. Aaron slowly lowered her weapon, her mind racing to process what she was seeing. "Ray, how did you know it wouldn't attack?" Ray shrugged. "I didn't." But its body language wasn't hostile, it was more curious than anything. Besides, most creatures aren't naturally aggressive unless they feel threatened. As if to prove her point, The other creatures that had surrounded the crew began to withdraw, their massive forms retreating into the mist with a strange grace. Only the largest one remained, its glowing eyes still fixed on Ray. Zessa, who had remained quiet throughout the encounter, finally spoke. You do realize that these are the creatures the galaxy has been terrified of for centuries, right? The ones that entire fleets have avoided. Ray looked back at the massive creature, her grin widening. Yeah, but they're cute, aren't they? Erin rubbed her temples, feeling the tension in her shoulders finally release. You're something else, Ray. But what do we do now? We can't exactly bring one of these back to the ship. Ray chuckled. I wasn't planning on it. But this planet has a lot more to offer than we realized. These creatures aren't just mindless predators, they're intelligent. There's a whole ecosystem here we don't understand. As if responding to her words, the large creature let out a low, almost melodic hum. The ground beneath them trembled again, but this time it felt different, like a gentle vibration rather than an earthquake. It's calling to the others, Ray said quietly. I think it's trying to communicate. Erin exchanged a glance with Zessa, her expression torn between disbelief and curiosity. You're saying they're sentient? Maybe not in the way we understand sentience, Ray replied, but they're definitely more than just animals. We've been wrong about this planet and these creatures for a long time. Skarn, still visibly shaken by the encounter, holstered his blaster. So, we're not going to die. Ray grinned. Not today. Velrith let out a low chuckle, his heavy shoulders shaking with amusement. Leave it to a human to find the cute in a nightmare. As the massive creature finally began to retreat into the mist, its glowing eyes fading from view, the crew of the Odyssey stood in silence, processing what had just happened. Tarvos was not the death world they had feared, at least, not in the way they'd expected. Erin shook her head, a smile tugging at her lips. I don't know how you do it, Ray, but I'm glad we brought you along. Hey, Ray said with a shrug, someone's got to keep things interesting. The crew gathered themselves, the tension easing from their muscles as they prepared to head back toward the ship. But as they began to walk, Ray paused, glancing over her shoulder at the mist-shrouded forest. You know, she said, her voice thoughtful, I don't think we've seen the last of those creatures. Erin raised an eyebrow. You think they'll follow us? Ray grinned. Maybe. Or maybe we've just made some new friends. Skarn groaned. Please don't tell me you want to come back here. Ray laughed, falling into step with the rest of the crew. Who knows? Maybe next time we'll find something even cuter. Erin shook her head, her smile widening as they made their way back through the mist. Tarvos had been a place of fear for so long, but now, thanks to Ray's unorthodox perspective, it had become something entirely different, a place of wonder, filled with creatures that defied expectation. And as the crew of the Odyssey left the forest behind, Ray couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement for whatever the galaxy had in store for them next. After all, if there was one thing Ray had learned in her travels, it was that the universe was full of surprises, and sometimes the scariest things turned out to be the most fascinating of all. The crew of the Odyssey continued their trek back through the dense, fog-shrouded forest, though the mood had shifted considerably. What had started as a tense, life-or-death mission now carried an air of disbelief, and dare anyone say it, relief. Tarvos, the galaxy's infamous death world, had turned out to be. Well, not exactly harmless, but certainly not the predator-filled nightmare they had expected. At least not yet. Ray took point again, her pace steady but relaxed, her eyes still scanning the trees around them with curiosity rather than caution. Her mind was buzzing with possibilities. The massive, armored creatures they had encountered were unlike anything she had seen before, and the fact that they had displayed signs of intelligence communication even was thrilling. The implications were staggering. If they could study these creatures, understand their behavior, maybe even communicate with them. Erin's voice broke into her thoughts, pulling her back to reality. I know you're already planning your next scientific adventure, but I'd appreciate it if we could get back to the ship before we encounter something that's not cute. Ray grinned. Oh, come on, Commander. You've got to admit, that was pretty amazing. We just made first contact with an alien species the galaxy thought was pure nightmare fuel. Erin shook her head, though a small smile tugged at her lips. I'll admit it was unexpected. But this planet is still dangerous. Just because one species didn't eat us doesn't mean there aren't others that will. Skarn, who had been walking in the middle of the group, groaned audibly. I'd prefer we didn't test that theory. Let's just get back to the Odyssey and off this rock as fast as possible. Velrith, walking in his usual stoic manner, rumbled in agreement. Tarvos is unpredictable. We should not linger. Zessa, however, was watching Ray carefully, her emerald eyes thoughtful. You're not planning on leaving just yet, are you? She asked. Ray glanced at Zessa, giving a half smile. I mean, we can't leave without at least exploring a little more, right? We've barely scratched the surface. Skarn muttered something under his breath about humans and their love for danger, but Ray ignored him. She knew what Zessa was getting at. Tarvos was dangerous, sure, but the potential here was huge. They had a chance to study creatures that had been completely misunderstood for centuries, and that was a rare opportunity. You're thinking long-term, aren't you? Zessa pressed, her sharp gaze cutting through Ray's casual attitude. Maybe, Ray admitted. I just think we might be onto something here. That creature didn't just stumble upon us by accident. It was watching us. It was curious. And that doesn't worry you? Erin asked, raising an eyebrow. Ray shrugged. Not really. Curiosity's a good thing. It means they're intelligent. They're not just mindless monsters. Tell that to the rest of the galaxy, Velrith grumbled. They've been avoiding Tarvos for centuries for a reason. Ray didn't respond right away, but the idea stuck with her. The galaxy had gotten it wrong before. Humanity itself had been underestimated when it first ventured into the stars, seen as too reckless, too unpredictable to be taken seriously by the other advanced civilizations. But they had proven themselves capable often by seeing things in ways others didn't. Maybe that's what was happening now. We'll head back for now, Ray said, a hint of mischief in her voice, but I have a feeling this isn't the last time we'll be visiting Tarvos. Erin shot her a warning glance. Let's just survive this trip before planning the next one. The forest had started to thin, and the eerie mist that had surrounded them seemed to lighten as well. They were nearing the edge of the jungle, and the sight of the clearing where the Odyssey had landed was a welcome relief. The sleek, silver ship stood out against the dark greens and grays of the planet, a beacon of safety in an otherwise hostile environment. Skarn let out a breath of relief as they broke through the tree line. Finally, solid ground, open air. I swear I could feel that forest closing in on us. Velrith huffed in agreement, his heavy footfalls carrying him ahead toward the ship's ramp. I'll take the cold metal of a ship over this cursed land any day. But just as they approached the Odyssey, a soft rumble echoed through the clearing. Everyone froze. Please tell me that's the ship's engines warming up, Skarn whispered, his voice tinged with panic. Erin's hand instinctively went to her weapon, her eyes scanning the tree line for any sign of movement. Stay sharp. The rumble grew louder, but it wasn't coming from the trees. Ray, who had been standing closest to the ship, glanced down at the ground beneath her feet. It's coming from below us, she said, her voice filled with wonder rather than fear. Before anyone could react, the ground began to shake violently. The crew stumbled as the earth beneath them shifted and cracked. Velrith, with his bulk and armor, was the only one who remained steady, though even he looked alarmed. A massive fissure split the ground, and from the depths of Tarvos soil, something began to rise. Erin cursed, stepping back as a towering, multi-limbed creature emerged from the ground, its massive body covered in thick, stone-like plates. Unlike the creatures they had encountered earlier, this one was colossal, easily twice the size of their ship, and its limbs ended in sharp, jagged claws that tore through the earth as it hauled itself upward. What the hell is that? Skarn shouted, his voice cracking as he stumbled backward. Velrith took a defensive stance, his weapon ready. That is no pet. The creature's many eyes glowed with a deep, eerie light, and its maw, lined with rows of serrated teeth, opened in a low, guttural roar that shook the very air around them. For a moment, the crew stood frozen, stunned by the sheer size and power of the creature. It was the stuff of nightmares, exactly what they had feared Tarvos would unleash on them. Erin's mind raced as she calculated their options. The ship was close, but not close enough. They wouldn't make it aboard before the creature could strike. But Ray, standing just a few feet from the creature, didn't retreat. "Okay, I'll admit," she said, a hint of laughter in her voice. "This one's a little less cute." Skarn gaped at her. "Less cute? Ray, it's about to eat us." Ray didn't seem to hear him. She was too focused on the massive creature, her eyes narrowing as she took a step forward. "Wait a second. It's not attacking." Velrith shot her a look. "It is literally climbing out of the ground to crush us. It's attacking." No, Ray insisted, her eyes locked on the creature. "It's not posturing. I don't think it's here for us." Erin's instinct screamed to run, to get to the ship, but something about Ray's tone gave her pause. "What do you mean?" Ray pointed to the creature's body, her voice growing more confident. "Look at its movements. It's not focused on us. It's defensive. It's protecting something." Before anyone could question her further, the massive creature lifted one of its colossal limbs and turned its bulk slightly, revealing something nestled deep within the crater it had crawled from. At first, it was hard to make out through the dust and debris, but then it became clear. There, at the center of the crater, was a cluster of eggs, massive, shimmering, and pulsing with a soft, golden light. The crew stared in shock as the creature let out a low, rumbling growl, its massive body positioned protectively over the nest. "It's a mother," Ray whispered, her voice filled with awe. "She's just protecting her young." Erin's mind raced as she processed the situation. This was not the deadly predator they had feared. It was a mother guarding her brood. They had stumbled too close to the nest, and the creature had emerged to defend it. "We need to get out of here," Velrith said, his voice low and tense. "Now." "No," Ray said quickly, stepping forward again. "We can't just run. If we show fear, she'll think we're a threat." Skarn threw his arms up in frustration. "We are a threat. We're standing right next to her giant death eggs." Ray shot him a look. "Calm down. I've got this." "Got this," Erin said, incredulous. "Ray, that thing could crush us all with one swipe." "I know," Ray replied calmly, her eyes still focused on the creature. "But she doesn't want to hurt us. She just wants to make sure her babies are safe. We need to show her we're not a danger." Erin clenched her fists, her body screaming at her to pull Ray back, to get her as far from the creature as possible. But Ray had proven, time and again, that her instincts, however reckless they seemed, were often right. "Okay," Erin said, though her voice was tight with tension. "What's the plan?" Ray took a deep breath, then slowly knelt down in the soft soil, lowering herself into a non-threatening position. "We show her we're not here to hurt her. We back away slowly, no sudden movements. She'll let us leave if we don't act like predators." Velrith and Skarn exchanged worried glances, but they followed Ray's lead, lowering their weapons and moving slowly. Erin took a deep breath and did the same, though every instinct told her to run. The creature watched them closely, its massive head tilting slightly as its many eyes tracked their movements. Its low growl rumbled through the air, but it didn't advance. Ray, moving slowly and deliberately, began to back away from the creature, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Easy," she whispered softly. "We're not here to hurt you." The others followed her lead, backing away step by step, their eyes never leaving the towering beast. The tension in the air was palpable, but the creature remained where it was, its massive limbs curled protectively around its nest. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the edge of the clearing. The creature's glowing eyes watched them, but it didn't pursue. Erin let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "We're clear. Move, now." The crew made their way quickly toward the Odyssey, their footsteps light but hurried. As they neared the ship's ramp, Ray glanced back one last time, her eyes meeting the creature's. For a brief moment, something passed between them, a silent understanding. The creature let out a soft, rumbling sound, almost like a purr, before turning its attention back to the nest. Ray smiled as she stepped aboard the ship. See? Not so bad. Skarn collapsed into one of the seats inside the ship, his face pale. Not so bad? We were almost lunch. Almost, Ray said with a wink. But we weren't. Velrith let out a rumbling laugh. You humans are truly mad. Zessa, who had remained silent during the encounter, finally spoke up. Ray, you might be the only person in the galaxy who would look at a creature like that and call it cute. Ray shrugged, grinning. Hey, it's all about perspective. Erin, despite herself, chuckled as she powered up the ship's systems. Well, whatever it is, it's worked so far. As the Odyssey lifted off and soared into the sky, leaving the mist-shrouded world of Tarvos behind, Ray leaned back in her seat, a satisfied smile on her face. The galaxy was full of danger, full of mystery, but it was also full of beauty. And sometimes the scariest creatures turned out to be the most misunderstood. Ray couldn't wait to find out what else the universe had in store.